Okay, we'll get going. Welcome to the Assessment and Accountability January webinar. My name is Kevin Whitman. I'm the Director for Assessment and Accountability. A few housekeeping notes. Please submit your questions in the questions box and we'll get to those as we see them. The PowerPoint slides, as always, are available as a document. So if you want to follow along that way, you can do so using the GoToWebinar document section. The presentation is recorded and it's going to be posted after this if you'd like to access it later. The turnaround time we have there is typically 10 days. And everyone on the call right now is muted, just so you know. Wanted to start with a few quick announcements. In particular, the ISAT summative tests for spring 2021 have a few changes this year as we're trying to introduce some additional flexibility for schools and districts, knowing that this is a challenging time. We have extended the window, so you'll see the new dates for the summative window and the paper window there as well, listed on the slide. We have also enabled remote administration when necessary, and so our expectation is that most students will test in person. However, we will have a process that we're putting together right now where districts can apply to have students participate in the summative assessment remotely when that's necessary. And we'll have more information on that later in the webinar and in the future as well. And we also are using an adjusted form this year to reduce testing time. And so that'll save about 30 to 40 minutes on the test for students, depending on which grade level they're in. And when we're at Kevin Chandler's section, he'll have a little bit more detail on that as well. So a few things we're just introducing to try to make testing a little bit easier this year. Another announcement is that in response to the ongoing data disruptions from last year, the U.S. Department of Education created what they called an addendum for this year. And so that's a way for states to make modifications to the accountability system for this year only to account for the missing data from 2020. The Idaho Board of Education approved a draft addendum last Monday, and we have posted it for public comment at the JotForm URL you'll see available there. So responses are going to be accepted until January 27th. So if you'd like to see the changes there and weigh in, please check it out. And if you have any questions, always feel free to email me, and I'd be happy to describe anything in more detail on that addendum. And last, in terms of announcements, I wanted to say congratulations to Elena. She has been selected as the new ELA and literacy coordinator for our content and curriculum team. So we are really sad to lose her here in assessment and accountability, but we're glad she's staying with the department and that she's going to be guiding the state's efforts on literacy. And so we will miss her, but we were glad to have all of her support throughout the years. I know all of you have really appreciated her help with the ISATs and the IRI. Going forward, we will have some new contact staffing announcements in the future for folks who are going to be able to take over some of those responsibilities, but we'll let you know about that when we have that information available. And now I'll turn it over to Andrew to discuss the English Language Proficiency Assessment.
All right, good morning, Idaho. I hope you, your students, and your loved ones are well. Okay, so first I wanted to say that you got this. Even though you may feel like the man in the first picture, yes, we all feel like that right now. We still have to do everything possible to find solutions to put out those fires or issues at hand that are in our purview. As you can see in picture 2, this guy is pretty persistent in addressing his issue and eventually puts out the fire. So remember, sometimes the most unconventional approach can solve our most pressing issues. Just remember, you got this. All right, the 2020-2021 Access test will be like no other, so preparing for the test window now will reduce hiccups during the test window. A best practices document was created to assist district test coordinators in preparing for the unique environment the Access test will be administered in. The document provides essential questions to district test coordinators that district test coordinators should be considering when scheduling and administering access. So check that out. Okay, a new document has been posted to the ELPA webpage, and that's on the next slide, giving instructions on how to track students who do not complete access due to COVID-related issues. COVID-related codes will be recorded within WIDA AMS. So please keep in mind that the goal is to test 100% of your district L populations during the test window. And it is good practice to review that document to make sure that we are doing everything possible to collect that data on why students might not be able to test due to COVID-related reasons this year. Okay, 2020-2021 is an access recertification year. Test administrators, district test coordinators, and school test coordinators and other district personnel will be handling secure test materials will need to be recertified prior to testing. District test coordinators are encouraged to keep copies of each test administrator's training record on site to ensure test administrators have reviewed the responsibilities before, during, and after testing. Okay, district test coordinators can verify that test administrators' recertification has been completed via the account management and training status tile located within the WIDA secure portal. Test administrators must be certified for the access mode and grade level cluster they will be administering. So go in there and check if your test administrators are up to date on their training. Okay, districts are now able to view and add students to test session rosters within WIDA AMS. Newly identified students or students transferring from one district to another and do this throughout the testing window. This means new Ls enrolled within your district after November 20th, 2020 will need to be added to your district student roster and be assigned to a test session prior to being tested. Mark your calendars because access materials are scheduled to be delivered between January 14th and January 18th. That is starting tomorrow. The yellow DRC boxes of test materials will need to be signed for at the time of their delivery. And it is encouraged to inventory the test materials to verify all materials on the packing list are accounted for. District test coordinators can reference the district and school test coordinator manual for more guidance on how to best approach the inventory process. If districts require additional materials over the course of the testing window, the overage test materials provided in the initial materials shipment should be exhausted before making an additional materials order. There is a 15% overage for districts split between districts and schools. So 7% of the overage will go directly to the school shipment and 7% will stay at the district. But all materials are sent to the district, so you will have that 15% sent to the district. Districts should only need to make one additional materials order during the 2021 access window. Additional material orders can be placed within WIDA AMS under the materials header once the additional materials order window opens, which is January 15th through March 17th, 2021. Okay, so district test coordinators should be collaborating or have already collaborated with their district IT coordinators to confirm that the IT requirements have been met prior to access test window being opened. Resources explaining how to set up a configuration and install the required software to testing devices can be found in the WIDA Secure portal under the Technology Resources. Also, the Technology User Guide is a helpful resource for IT coordinators to have on hand as reference before, during, and after testing. Okay, so the accessibility and accommodation supplement should be reviewed to ensure the appropriate accommodations are assigned to students who have a documented need on each section of the access. And please remember, accommodations should only be assigned to those students who use them during regular class instruction. Accommodations can be assigned to students within the WIDA AMS under the student management header. Okay, so it is the responsibility of the district to ensure that all identified Ls are tested in the new year, this year. The access test window opens on January 25th, 2021 and closes on March 19th, 2021. And due to the extended test window, district test coordinators should be aware that this did adjust the dates for the LEA pre-data validation and dates LEAs should be receiving access test results. So if you have any questions about the revised dates, please do not hesitate to reach out. And finally, the WIDA webinar series has been posted onto the ELPA webpage under the training tab. Below is information on the upcoming webinars through March 9th, 2021. And specific WebEx webinar links are embedded into the tiles or can be found on the ELPA webpage under the training tab under the webinar heading. Previous webinar content can be found in the WIDA Secure portal within the download library. Okay, at this time, I'd like to answer any questions.
There are no ELPA questions right now, Andrew.
All right, everybody stay safe and wash your hands. Thanks.
Hello out there. My name is Karen Striegel. I'm the coordinator for alternate assessment, and it's been a while since I joined the monthly assessment webinar, and I'm glad to be here today. I have 4 main topics: the IDAA Test Administration Manual, training to administer the new IDAAs, ordering paper test materials for ISAT and IDAA, and a new thing, we have the non-standard accommodations request form. As I was reviewing the IDAA Test Administration Manual, or TAM, I realized that a lot of the processes associated with administering the new IDAA are now the same as for administering the summative ISAT. The IDAA and the ISAT have more in common than they've ever had in the past. Therefore, we will be combining and reorganizing the 2 TAMs into one TAM to rule them all. We're reorganizing the 1 TAM into sections related to before testing, during testing, and after testing. All of the common processes like completing the TA certification course, test security, TIE, the secure browser, and test improprieties will be outlined under these before, during, and after headings. Any IDAA specific information, such as procedures for completing the learner characteristics inventory, the student response check, using human voice recordings, and the early stopping rule, will be detailed in appendices. There will be appendices for other ISAT specific topics as well, like the test administration script and such. Kevin Chandler and I are working closely together to develop a cohesive TAM that will streamline training and simplify the spring summative testing. We expect the 1 TAM to be released around February 22nd. I know all of you and your teachers involved with the Idaho Alternate Assessment are hungry for training for administering these new tests. Remember, they're going to be new tests in ELA and math and science. Keep breathing. I've planned some recorded vignettes to support you, and I'm pondering that once they're done, I will probably set up some Q&A sessions, kind of open Zoom meetings. So if you have questions, you can just come on and ask them. Working on that. You see the topics listed here. There'll be one specific to the learner characteristics inventory, conducting the student response check, although I'll probably combine that with the early stopping rule. Things connected to administering the Idaho Alternate Assessment, including the human voice recordings and the fixed form with the printed response option cards. The LCI opens in February, so that vignette will be released first. The rest of the vignettes I'll release as soon as I can get them completed, so keep breathing. So I want to talk about the paper materials order form. It's open now. So you can access the paper materials order form from the ISAT portal homepage, and you can see I highlighted it. It's in a new location. It's on the right-hand side under Welcome. It's the first teal box you see, paper materials order form. You also see here the testing window. So the paper testing window is April 5th through May 21st. So your paper test orders are due by February the 16th to guarantee delivery by March the 22nd, and they come to the district, I believe, and it gives you time to distribute them and make sure you have everything you need. So we will actually be taking orders through May the 6th, but if you order materials after February 16th, there's no guaranteed delivery before the test window opens. And we're closing the window on May the 6th because the testing window goes to the end of May, and that's time still for you to get paper test materials and then administer the paper test before the closing date on May 22nd. Now, we have a new thing called the non-standard accommodations form. So the non-standard accommodation request, special accommodations request form. You see here on the screen the picture, it's a JOT form. And it asks you for requester information, who's asking for it, and information about the student. How does it appear in the student's IEP or plan? It's going to ask you to describe this accommodation request in detail. Now, these are requests for accommodations that are not outlined in the Usability, Accessibility, and Accommodations Guidelines, the UWAG. So this is non-standard accommodations. You're going to describe it in detail, and you're going to describe how that accommodation links to classroom instruction. You've also got to give a purpose. Why does this student need this special accommodation? And you must have pre-approval. So I'm going to show you an example of a request we got a couple of years ago. So this is a picture of the standard multiplication table, right, that kids get to use. And I don't know offhand what grades they are, right? So if you'll click, again, thank you. This is a screenshot of an alternate multiplication chart that we approved for use on the 5th grade math ISAT for a student with dyslexia a few years back. Now, dyslexia. We know that Idaho doesn't recognize dyslexia as a disability category, but we know that there's some central processing issues that go along with having it. So this is the last time we had a special accommodations request. So I think this is like 2 years ago. The student's IEP allowed him to use this chart in lieu of a standard multiplication chart in class, and the student's mother had found that anytime they could put a picture, connect picture to his learning, he was more successful. So this is the multiplication chart that a student used when he took his 5th grade ISAT in lieu of the multiplication table, the standard one you see there. So if you've got a student who has an IEP accommodation or a 504 accommodation that's not in the Usability, Accessibility, and Accommodations Guideline, again, the UWAG, and it's in a student's IEP, then you need to fill out the special accommodations request form, and we'll review it. We'll probably call you and talk to you about it. You don't get to put any attachments to that JOT form. We'll probably ask you for what it looks like. So don't hesitate to contact me. As I always say, I appreciate what you do. And any questions?
Is the window to administer the alternative assessment open before the standard administration?
No, the Idaho alternate assessment has the same testing window as the ISAT.
That is all. Thank you.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. This is Kevin Chandler here at the department. Just a few updates for science. Okay, first up for spring 21, of course, we're still moving ahead with our independent field test. Just a quick reminder that there's going to be no makeup testing for last school year. And because we are administering independent field tests, that means we will not have any kind of individual student reports or reported scores. However, participation is required for students in grades 5, 8, and 11. As Whitman alerted to earlier, we will have remote administration available this year. This will apply to our science independent field test. Of course, the expectation is that most students will test in person, but of course, depending on an individual district circumstances, they will have the ability to administer our science assessment remotely. And then looking even farther into the future here for spring 22, that's when we're going to be having our operational field test. Of course, same grades, 5, 8, and 11. And that's when we're planning to have individual student reports and scores provided after we have our summer 22 standard setting meeting. Any questions for science?
Nothing for science ISAT.
Excellent. Then I'll throw it over to myself here and give a couple updates for ISAT. Okay, so our plans for spring 21. Of course, we will have required summative testing in grades 3 through 8 and 10 for ELA and math. Just like with science, we're not going to have any kind of mega testing. And at this time, the USDOE has not waived any kind of requirements for summative testing. So that means we are proceeding as normal. But as Whitman alluded to earlier, of course, depending on an individual district's circumstances, we will have remote administration available for those students. Of course, the expectation is that most students will test in person, but again, we will have a remote administration available. So a little bit more about the Spring 21 ISET Summative Administration. As we've talked about, of course, the test window has been extended. All this information applies to in-person and remote administration. So that means the test window opens on March 15th and is going to be now closed on May 28th. For ELA and math, we will have an adjusted form. Of course, this adjusted form will be administered to those students either in person or remotely. It will have full blueprint coverage, meaning we'll have a CAT portion or a computer adaptive test portion and a PT portion or a performance task portion. The only kind of difference here is that with this CAT portion, it's going to be a little shorter, which means students will spend about 30 to 40 minutes less on the CAT portion of the test. Of course, we did this to reduce testing time for Spring 21. A little bit more about this adjusted form. Again, this will apply to either in-person or remote administration. Individual students will receive an overall scale score, and groups of students will receive a claim level performance data. Okay, so let's get into the remote administration process. As Whitman alluded to earlier, we will have an application process for the districts. Of course, this is for documentation purposes so the department can track which districts are remotely administering the Spring 21 Summative Assessment. And we will, of course, have lots of different resources to help guide you through this new process. It includes videos for parents and students, training PowerPoints, quick guides, infographics, checklists, and FAQs. All of those resources will be posted in one place on the ISAT portal. We've already created a folder for remote administration, and all the resources that we'll be creating for remote administration for Spring 21 will be located here. One other resource that is available right now that I do want to point out that's going to be really important this year is the practice and training tests. Those are available right now. So you want to give students, parents, teachers, pretty much anybody access to these practice and training tests so they're familiarized with the test delivery system. So you go to the ISAT portal, it's over on the right there, click on the practice and training test panel. That brings you to this page. This page is really informative, not only for a description of all the different sample and training tests that are available, but also where you can access the scoring guides. If you click on the panel that's located here, it will take you to the sign-in page. I want to point out here that the guest user and guest session toggle switches are turned on. That means that anyone can access the practice and training tests as many times as they need. We have practice and training tests available for ELA, math, and science. Okay, one of the resources I do want to point out is on the accessibility and accommodations. That's important every year, but I want to make sure that you guys are familiar with the accessibility and accommodations that are available this year. Of course, access the UAAG, or the Usability, Accessibility, and Accommodations Guidelines, or the UAAG. That informs you as far as what universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations are available for students, and they need to be documented on the IEP and/or 504 plan. It also informs you as far as what are available on the assessments. So we have these resources available right now. Access them to learn about the universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations that are available. Also want to point out one other resource that's available, and that's the Tools for Teachers platform. We've talked about this a lot, but I do want to point out that the Tools for Teachers platform does have an accessibility strategies panel located right on the front page. So if you have a user role assigned in TIDE, you have access to Tools for Teachers. So log into Tools for Teachers, and on the left-hand side, there's a panel where you can quickly access the accessibility strategies. Right now, there are currently 54 strategies available listed on the Tools for Teachers website. Educators can then connect those resources and give students opportunities to practice using those accessibility strategies, not only in the classroom, but then also on assessments as well. So make sure you log in to Tools for Teachers to access those. Any ISAT questions?
There are quite a few questions, Chandler, so let's start this. Will those adjusted times be reflected in the TAM for planning scheduling purposes?
Yes, in the FAQ document that I'm currently putting together, we have estimations for the amount of time that it will take a student to complete the adjusted form, and we'll make sure to document that there.
Second question, are districts able to apply for a single school within their district for remote testing? For example, could we administer in person on all campuses, but our new online school administer remotely?
That is an excellent question. We're still working out some of the details here. Whitman, would you like to take this question?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the core component here is exactly right, which is we're still finalizing some of the details about how exactly that will look. The one thing to mention on a school level application, though, is even if you had an online school where all students were participating in their education online, there may be students there for whom the remote administration wouldn't be appropriate. And that could be because of the types of accommodations and supports they need, or because they may have some sort of technological limitation, or if they're just more comfortable kind of testing in person. So you would still, in that instance, need to have an opportunity for those students to test in person, even if they were learning online.
Okay, so next question. The reduced CAT is for both math and ELA?
Correct. Yes, we will be having an adjusted form for math and ELA.
Great. Regarding the shorter CAT tests, the blueprints show the number of items for each target. Will this be updated and sent out?
Yes, it certainly will. We have information from Smarter on the adjusted form blueprint, and we will be publishing those in the ISAP portal as well.
Thank you. Will we be able to drill down to standard level data on this year's ISAT?
That is an excellent question. Standard level. So the information will be published in our reporting site, and I imagine that we will be able to drill down to the standard level there. Again, some details are still being worked out, but I imagine, yes, that still will be available for this year's administration.
Thank you. Will the SDE have clear guidelines on who is eligible for the remote summative assessments?
Yes, as Whitman has alluded to earlier, our expectation is that most districts will test in person. However, due to individual circumstances, we will have the remote administration available, and we will make sure that in the application process is clear as far as the guidelines and qualifications for that remote administration.
Great. A few more. When do you expect those remote access guides and trainings will be available?
Yep, we are working on them now. Those are coming in the next couple of weeks.
Are there plans to add science to the Content Explorer?
That is an excellent question. The Content Explorer is a product of Smarter Balanced, and they have taken the Common Core standards and putting them onto their onto the Content Explorer platform. The Idaho State Science Standards are individual to us, so right now there aren't any plans to put them onto the Content Explorer.
Great. How important is it to do the practice test if students have been using the interim assessments?
If students have been logging in and using the interim assessments, they have been given practice with the test delivery system. What I was alluding to there is for the younger students, especially in elementary age students, giving them as many opportunities as they can in order to log into the test delivery system and practice using that platform. You know, when they first log in, there's lots of buttons. They want to go in and click on everything. And then also giving parents or guardians or grandparents opportunities to see what's on the test delivery system as well. So that is available for everyone. And that's what I was alluding to there as far as giving those individuals opportunities to practice on the test delivery platform.
Thank you. Will bandwidth need to be addressed in those remote administration manuals?
Excellent question. Yes, on the practice training test site right now, there is a diagnostic checker, and that will be one of the first steps that you will have to execute in order to make sure that the student can take the test or that the test can be administered remotely.
Great. Is there a date window for applying for remote administration?
There will be a window for applying to administer remotely. We will include that information when we publish the application.
Thank you. A few more still. When will the resources be available for remote testing?
Those will be published on the ISAP portal. We have a remote administration folder already set up there. We will be filling that in the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. Okay, there's another one. Explain when designated supports can be used and who makes the decision on use. What permissions are required?
Okay, so I might need to rely on Elena and or Karen to weigh in on this as well, but the UOG kind of lays out information as far as not only what the designated supports are available, but then what population of students those apply for. So access that UOG in order to find out not only what's available, but also what student populations are can access those or what they're appropriate for. Did I miss anything there? Anything else that I need to add on there, either Karen or Elena?
Chandler, this is Karen. So designated supports are available to any student for whom a teacher or a team decides that a student needs it. So while sometimes something called a designated support in the UOG might be on a student's IEP, a student does not have to have an IEP or a 504 plan or an English learning plan to access designated supports. They're for any student who has a need.
Thank you, Karen. A few more still, they keep coming. What about remote options for individual students? For example, currently IDLA students.
As far as drilling down to the individual student level, it's a really great question. I think as Whitman kind of alluded to earlier, as districts apply, we will be considering if individual schools can do that. I'm not sure about the individual students. It's a really great question. Whitman, any guidance on individual student levels?
Sure, yeah. So when a district's applying, even though we're kind of still finalizing that process, they wouldn't have to apply to enable it for an individual student. So it's going to be assurances at kind of a broader level and descriptions of potentially at school level. We're still working that out, but not down to a student level. But in TIDE, there is the opportunity for individual students to be listed with whether or not they can participate remotely. So once a district would be approved, then they would have a process for identifying the students for whom it's appropriate to test remotely, provided they've kind of met the assurances that we lay out there. And then in TIDE, they can individually kind of toggle that for students to say whether that remote option is feasible for them.
Okay, a few more. Do you foresee being able to administer the remote ISAT via web browser instead of the application, or will it still have to be the application on a computer?
Yeah, so what we're envisioning now is that if a test administrator has the proper web browser installed on their machine, Chrome or Firefox, for instance, they'll be able to access the internet, access the TA application, and that is where they'll be able to either start an in-person or remote session.
Great. Will Zoom have to run for proctoring purposes while testing remotely, or is there something built into the remote option?
Right now, there is something built into the remote testing platform in order to allow the test administrator and the students to communicate with each other.
Thank you. Can students use their personal devices to test at school?
If they're at school, no. The proper procedures there would be more than have the school provide the machines for the student to log in and test.
Thank you. What kind of bandwidth will teachers need in order to administer the test to more than one student? Assuming it will need to be significantly higher since there will be more than one student test streaming at once.
Yep. So in the guidance that we're putting out there, we will have explicit information as far as the bandwidth that will be required. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the diagnostic checker that is available now, that will be able to check the network security settings and the bandwidth that's available in order to make sure that it's proper for either in-person or remote administration. Will the ISAT reports be as detailed for 2021 as they have been in the past? They will not. So as I alluded to earlier, the individual students will have the overall claim score, and the groups of students will have the claim performance data. However, they will not, at the individual level, they will not include a claimant. Thank you. Another bandwidth question. Will the bandwidth diagnostics come up when students log in to take the interim assessment remotely? So right now in the resources that we're preparing, we're basically breaking it down to before, during, and after testing. The before testing portion will include having the students log in and check their bandwidth capabilities in order to make sure they can support remote administration.
Thank you. Four more, excuse me. Will the window to administer interims be extended as well? If so, when do those close?
The interim assessment window will not be changing. That still will be closing at the designated time. So that will not be extended.
Thank you. Can students test via web-based or do they need the ISAP browser?
So for in-person testing, students will be using the Idaho Secure Browser and using the school's machines. For remote administration, there's two options there. One, the school can provide a machine for the students and the students can log in with the Idaho Secure Browser, or the student could use their own machine and their own web browser that's installed on their machine.
Thank you. And last one, will all of these Q&As be posted with the presentation? And actually, I can answer that, Kelly. Yes, we put the Q&A up when we post the video to YouTube, and it's going to be on our resource center on the assessment and accountability page. And that is the last question.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone, so much for all the questions. As I mentioned earlier, I am putting together a FAQ. So a lot of these questions will be put into there in order to clarify the needs for remote administration for Spring 21. So thank you so much. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elena for some updates for IRI.
Hi, everybody. Fantastic questions. I will get started and head right into some Idaho Reading Indicator updates. As Kevin mentioned early in the presentation, I am moving over to the content and curriculum team, but I want to say a big thank you to all of you. It's been fantastic working with you as testing coordinators and on both the ELA ISAT assessment and the IRI. I will miss the assessment work, but please remember that I am still available for IRI and ELA ISAT questions for the near future until there is a replacement for that position. So if you have specific questions, don't hesitate to reach out and ask. Some iStation need to know information. Remember that January is the month that you will see the alphabetic decoding test begin for your kindergarten students. Scores will not appear in reporting or impact overall student scores in iStation if the kindergarten student has not gated into the subtest. If iStation is able to complete their national norming for alphabetic decoding, you can expect that alphabetic decoding will become a part of the Spring 2022 kindergarten battery. For additional information about the kindergarten alphabetic decoding, click on that banner at the top of the iStation login page, and it'll take you to a need to know site. Next thing that I want to talk about that I mentioned in our December webinar is the alternate background or reskin study that iStation is going to conduct in February. So this opportunity will be for both second and third grade students. The study will provide 2 alternate backgrounds to randomly selected second and third grade students in each district that opts to participate. Remember that participation is optional. If your district is interested in signing up to be a part of the alternate background study, you'll sign up directly through iStation. To learn more about this opportunity, you can click on the link in the slide, and that will give you information on how to sign up. The study window for this is going to be February, so if you are interested, you'll want to sign up at some point in the next 2 weeks. Just be the month of February. The study will start on February 7th and run through February 28th. There is a new report in iStation that I hope you've all had a chance to take a look at. At the end of December, iStation launched a comparison report for district and school manager level users. This report provides a comparison between the performance data for the state, district, and school. There is a grade level filter in the report. You find this report under the Report tab in iStation, and it's only available to district and school level users. Note that when you're viewing the state aggregate, the number of students assessed is based on the sum of average students per tier, not an average of all assessed students. For this reason, you'll see an NA for the number of students at the state and district level. Also check out the new at-risk report. This report is available for grades 1 through 3 It is found also under the Report tab. It's designed to identify students who may be at risk for reading difficulties. The at-risk report is going to look for patterns of difficulties at a skill level for each grade. You're able to filter this report by the number of risk indicators or by a specific indicator. It's going to list students at a high, moderate, or low risk level. We are putting together some training for both the at-risk report and the comparison report. This training will be located on Edmodo. Your course code is on the slide here, and you can look for that training to be posted in the next week. To reiterate, iStation has created a new help guide that is interactive. You get to this guide by hovering over the Get Help green button on the login page and clicking on Go to iStation User Guide. You'll find tiles for frequently visited sites, as well as many more topics that you can click on to get information on using iStation. Some fall 2021 enhancements that I want to share with folks. Beginning in fall 2021, the iStation application will move to the web and be offered through WebAssembly or WASM. This is going to allow Chromebook users to access iStation through a simple URL link. It's going to also improve iStation's capabilities. More information and details to ensure that this transition is smooth will be shared closer to the end of the school year. I want to make a note that this transition will not happen prior to the May testing window, but be watching for information to make that smooth transition prior to fall 2021. Another enhancement launching for Idaho in fall 2021 is iStation's PowerPath. PowerPath will be a new user experience with a new style, a simplified menu, and much more. You can visit the interactive user guide that I just shared to learn more and watch an informational video about PowerPath. Again, I will continue to share information in the coming months as this gets closer. Thinking ahead to springtime, the testing window for IRI opens on May 3rd, closes on May 28th. All K-3 students do need to be assessed. There is new guidance on assessing students who are deaf and hard of hearing and blind and visually impaired. This was published in the summer of 2020 in the IRI Test Administration Manual, so be sure to review that guidance. Any IRI questions?
We do have a few. We also have some people that are saying thank you and congratulations, Elena. The first question, did you say the comparison report was or was not available at the teacher level?
The comparison report is not available at the teacher level. It is for manager level users only.
Great. And then will the WebAssembly have any effect with districts using Clever?
It will not. iStation has assured us that it will work seamlessly with Clever and that their staff will be available to provide transition support for districts using single sign-on.
And that is the last question. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone. This is Ayaka. I hope you all are doing well. So the college entrance exam graduation requirement has been waived for the class of 2021. This includes summer 2021 graduates and juniors who are graduating early. Please note that you may keep this requirement for your school in district. So whenever I get a phone call from the parents, I will refer them to you guys. This requirement is still in effect for the class of 2022. Please make sure to offer the spring SAT school day to your students. And this slide contains upcoming events and deadlines, and I'm going to talk about each of these in the next few slides. The first one is spring SAT book registration. It's due tomorrow. It is required in order to order test materials, as there is no separate ordering process in TOS for the spring SAT. Please contact Idaho ST support if you have any technical issues. The next up is AccuPlacer training. We are hosting AccuPlacer site manager training as well as proctor training. There is a link that's on the slide right now that you can click to register yourself. I'll also send out an email after this webinar to let you guys know where the registration link is going to be available. The next up is March National Accommodation. That's due on January 22nd. And training module is available on the SAT Suits website. As you may remember from last year, the battery is running out. The student essay opt-in window is coming up after you book register. It starts on January 22nd and ends on February 5th. It's a really short window, so just wanted to let you know that it's coming up. As you remember, the essay is still optional, and opt-in is available in the student account, so the student has to do it, and we cannot do it for your students. More information will be provided on January 18th, 2021. Spring SAT virtual workshop is coming up. It's for, we have 3 different opportunities, Region 1, Region 2, 3 and 4, and 5, 6. If you're interested, please sign up. The College Board is going to be hosting the meeting. And the Big Future Day virtual college fair is coming up. February 6th is for any students and teachers and you guys that are interested in West or Southwest colleges. And more information is available on their College Board's website. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any college entrance exam questions, but I do have a question for Andrew Alba. Will we have to do a participation appeal for students that have a COVID-related code in WIDA AMS?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, that is outlined in that new procedures document. And yes, you will have to submit the appeal in the Access Appeals web application once it opens.
Great, thank you. And then swinging back to Ayaka, what was the January 18th deadline?
There is no January 18th deadline. There's January 14th deadline, which is the bulk registration.
Okay, and that looks like the last question for college entrance exams. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We have our information for our next webinar here, which will be February 10th at 10 a.m. As always, you can find links and review past webinars at our resource center on the Assessment and Accountability page. And we have the URL there for actually registering if you want as well. We'll stay on the line for any final questions. And just one thing I wanted to note based on the number of questions we had about the ISAT remote administration is we know that's a big topic for everyone. And as Kevin Chandler said, we're working hard to get all those resources together and out to you as quickly as possible. But if you do have any questions in the meantime, always let us know. We'll do our best to answer whatever we can. And it helps us because we can then include it in our FAQs because other folks probably have similar questions. So as I said, we'll stay on the line for a bit here for any other questions.
We do have one. Where was the diagnostic checker for bandwidth Chandler mentioned?
Yeah, Whitman, if you want to go back to the practice and train tests sign-in slide. Okay, yep. So right underneath the guest session, on the left there, it says Run Diagnostics. That will be the diagnostic checker that will be used.
All right. And then we had a question about the PDF of the presentation. Lori, that is in the handouts section of your control panel. You should see a handouts, chat, and poll, and there should be the PDF presentation in the handouts section. And another bandwidth question. I noticed that on the technical specifications, it supports Chrome OS 8386. Will we run into issues if we are on Chrome OS 87?
Another excellent question. Again, we work closely with our testing vendor in order to make sure that all platforms that they create are going to be compatible with any kind of Chrome updates. So they have to go through a testing process and UAT process to make sure that everything is copacetic. I imagine there won't be any problems, again, because of the update. But yeah, we'll make sure to double check with them to make sure everything is going to be good there.
All right. And that was, crossing fingers, the last question.
All right. Thank you, everyone. As always, feel free to reach out to us at any time. And thank you for joining us today.